Wow, that was quite an interesting debate, to say the least. I don't know how to describe it other than interesting. I'm going to read off my notes here off the computer because there's a lot to talk about. There's very much, but this entire video has been condensed for you. I've gone through everything and I've condensed everything so that this, even though it's a bit of a longer video, it's still worthwhile watching. So everything about this debate seemed to be focused around two things: America in general, and specifically Trump. That's very weird. They even quoted how many days Trump has left in his term. That's weird. That's bizarre. That's like overly obsessive. This is Canadian politics. I understand that Trump and America has a major influence on our economy with the tariffs and our trade, but very weird. Everything came back to Trump. So that's the first thing. The second thing is every time they ask questions to the leaders, all the leaders, they were, it might not be that included in this condensed version, but when it was happening, all the leaders were looking up at the TV screen and seeing what was playing, whereas Pierre Poilievre was making full-blown eye contact with Canadians watching, which is kind of cool. And it shows that Pierre is more prepared to represent Canada on the global stage than others. He's able to focus on looking at the camera, which is very important for optics on the global stage, and he can listen to questions, interpret it in his brain, and spit out a response accordingly without going through this like weird gymnastics that all the other party leaders were doing, where they're looking up and looking kind of weird. So from an optics perspective, Pierre absolutely won. For obvious reasons, we're only going to show the debating points between Pierre and Mark Carney. This election is a two-party election, and the majority of the country only really cares about what these two leaders have to say. For those who didn't know, the Green Party was actually not included in this, even though they were originally invited. I think it was earlier today they were excluded. You had Elizabeth May get notice saying your party doesn't meet right now the minimum criteria of belonging to the debate. And so, yeah, that kind of sucks. And when it comes to Jagmeet Singh or the NDP, they're on the brink of losing their official party status. So I don't fully care what he has to say. And the Bloc is a provincial party at the federal level, which is just weird to me. There's no Alberta party in the House of Commons. Yet there's a Quebec party, and in terms of who provides, like which provinces provide what to the overall country and the GDP, Quebec is a leech on our entire society. Sorry, not the Quebec people, just the way the government has gone about things. So I've done my best to just scrub through everything and only pretty much include Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney. The NDP and the Bloc, so that's point number 3. Point number 4 is NDP and the Bloc both know that they're not going to win. Even though Jagmeet goes around saying when I'm prime minister, they both know they're going to win. So essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to tear down the Conservatives, or actually sometimes in this debate, it was also tear down the Liberals as much as they can to make sure that there's a minority government, whether it's a minority Conservative government or a minority Liberal government. It seems like both the Bloc and the NDP want there to be a minority insert party government. And the reason behind that is so that Canadian politics can continue to be controlled by coalitions. If the NDP or the Bloc need something from the sitting minority government, then they can twist their arm and get what they want. We've seen this the past 10 years with Justin Trudeau, where our entire political system, our entire country was held hostage by essentially one party or one person. That's Jagmeet Singh. So it's like they want to do that again, which is very, very bizarre. Point number 5, on the immigration piece, which is towards the end of the debate, probably skipped towards the last 3/4 of the debate. It's very weird. Right before the entire debate began, you had like hours ago, but moments before the debate began, you had an announcement come out saying that in the English one, which airs tomorrow on April 17th, it'll be banned from talking about immigration. So the only immigration debate that's happening in this election campaign debate is today, the French one. So that's very, very bizarre, especially considering that immigration is such a huge part of why we're in this position to begin with. Most Canadians are fine with immigration. I'm fine with immigration. Chances are you are fine with immigration, but not unfiltered immigration. like heavily filtered immigration. What we used to have, which is targeted towards good quality people and to job vacancies. So if there's nurses, a nurse shortage, then you bring in a bunch of Filipino chicks that are nurses, for instance, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have that anymore. It's just been everybody comes in, and it's been very much abused. And right now we have a lot of people that are sitting around jobless immigrants, or they're taking jobs from Canadians. So they haven't been brought here to fill jobs. They've just been brought here and now they exist. And then there's also a lot of bad people, a lot of bad actors, quite literally terrorists. So yeah, immigration is a huge part of where we are today as a failing economy and failing country. Kind of sad to hear that they're cutting that from the English part. My overall opinion of the entire show was that Pierre showed extreme dominant force with his body language, the way he stood tall, his ability to answer questions, less ums and ahs than everybody else. I mean, he didn't interrupt. He was a very good boy in the debate. He wasn't going like Jagmeet Singh going, bah, 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 bah. He was very good. I don't mean to call him a boy, but you know what I'm saying? Like he was very good. He was very professional, and that was to be expected, given that out of all of the Canadian politicians, Pierre Poilievre is, in my opinion, the best spokesperson. There is no better, more qualified person to give public speeches, to represent our country, to issue policy announcements, or to run our country better than Pierre. He's been ruling in the House of Commons, making a great name for himself, and you saw all of that reflected today in this debate, the French one. So wait till tomorrow. It's going to be absolutely insane. And then every party did a pretty good job of humiliating Mark Carney. His qualifications came up, the fact that he's been a failed banker, a global elitist, according to Pierre, and also the comments that Carney has said about Pierre Poilievre being a lifetime politician came into question. And it was okay, but it seemed like this is hyped up to be like a UFC main event, and it felt like a juvenile WWE or like small town wrestling match, low budget. Like, it didn't feel as enthusiastic as it could have. However, when you cut through all of that, and if you're a bit of a political nerd, then this was quite interesting to see the debating points. So all that being said, I know this was a bit of an extended intro. We're now going to take a look at this scrub through entire debate between Pierre and Mark Carney. And there's a couple other points that are mentioned from the other parties, but mostly it's just those two. So sorry for the long intro. I hope you enjoyed this video. Here's everything that happened tonight. And as a thank you to this channel and for me stopping everything that I was doing, it'd be super awesome if you guys took the time right now to click the like button and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get right into this video.
First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Leroy. And I'd like to thank everyone watching at home for joining us tonight. And I'd like to thank the other leaders for your service to Canada. Two things
Mr. Trump,
that don't include Mr. Trump. First of all, we need to double the rhythm of construction of new homes here in Canada. That's absolutely fundamental. And the second thing, we need to promote and strengthen our cultural institutions in Canada.
Monsieur Poilievre, 45 seconds.
45 seconds, Mr. Poilievre. Two things that you would promise Canadians to change their lives that have nothing to do with the United States.
Merci, Monsieur Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, and thanks to my colleagues for being here today. Clearly, life is no longer affordable. The promise of an affordable life is broken. I have a plan to make life more affordable by cutting taxes by 15%. That's one thing that will reward work for the middle class and for seniors who've already worked. Second thing, we're going to scrap the GST on new houses, and we're going to incentivize cities to reduce their taxes too, so that our young people can save up to $100,000 on a new home and restore the promise of Canada.
Mr. Trump is going to be tough. We don't know what's in store with him. I don't think any solution is going to be possible. We always thought they were our ally. It doesn't make sense. You can't reason with him. The government will have to stand firm, stay firm. We have to put him in his place. Otherwise, Otherwise, he'll destroy us totally. The answer should be pragmatic. It would be good to pause some of our services to the U.S. They need us. An eye for an eye. No messing around. Get us out of this mess. We need a leader who can make decisions to destabilize Trump and make him respect Canada. What does he plan to do with the new president of the United States? What do you plan to do with this president? That is the elephant in the room. So for your information, there are 1,073 days left in Donald Trump's term. Why do you think that you are the best person here tonight to negotiate with Mr. Trump? Mr. Poilievre, 35 seconds.
First of all, we will never be an American state. We will remain sovereign. On my first day as Prime Minister, I will restart negotiations to accelerate a deal that will put an end to the tariffs and protect our sovereignty. We can't control Trump, but at the same time, we have to control what we can control. We need to reverse liberal economic policies that have weakened our country. We need to unleash our resources, cut taxes, and bring jobs back home so that we can face Trump from a position of strength.
All right, well, first of all, in a crisis, you have to plan for the worst possible situation, and you have to have a plan to build a strong economy here in Canada. And we need to react with strength, and those are the elements that will allow us to succeed with Mr. Trump. He respects strength. He respects people who understand how the world works and who understand how the private sector works. And Canada needs to create other options, new, reliable partnerships around the world, and that's what I'll do.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Mr. Poilievre, you have called Carney a political grifter, a globalist banker who's disconnected from reality. And Mr. Carney, you've said Pierre Poilievre is a career politician who knows nothing about how the real world works. So I ask you the question, which of you first is capable of standing up to Donald Trump? Mr. Poilievre.
I am, because I'm going to put Canada first. I will never compromise Canada's interests, and I will control what we can control here. Obviously, no one will be able to control the decisions of Donald Trump, but we can control our economy, our domestic economy, by overturning liberal economic policies that have weakened our country and made us more dependent on the Americans.
Mr. Poilievre, you would make Canada more like the United States. You would Americanize our healthcare system, privatize it. Everyone knows that's what conservatives do.
That's not true.
Mr. Carney, you said that you're better?
All right. First of all, I know how to negotiate, and I agree with Mr. Singh. We need to start by saying what's never going to be on the table. The French language, Quebec's culture, and supply management will never be on the table. Our resources, that's the first thing. Second, in terms of Mr. Blanchet's point, the opportunities that we have with the European Union are there, and I've already started building new relationships with the European Union. As Prime Minister, I met with the President of France and with the President of the European Commission.
The problem, Mr. Carney, is that your party has been in power for 10 years, and in that time, it's not meetings that are going to change things. It's your policies that have blocked resources. C-69, which blocks not just pipelines, but also dams, mines, and liquid natural gas exploration. We have a deal with Europe, a trade deal. The Conservatives negotiated it, but Liberal legislation has prevented development, and you continue to support those laws. Those laws need to be repealed and replaced with laws that will unleash our resources and allow us to export abroad and allow us to become truly economically and
talk about that later.
Sovereign and have energy sovereignty as well.
2 seconds, but Mr. Carney, response, and then I have another question for Blanchet.
First of all, we need to fight in a trade war. We need to fight with counter tariffs. And all the money collected from our counter tariffs will go directly to workers and the businesses that are the most affected by this trade war. They won't be used for tax cuts the way that Mr. Poilievre is going to do.
You always want to increase them. You're a liberal. We want to cut taxes.
Started as Prime Minister
for a fourth liberal term.
I've just started.
You were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. Have you forgotten that?
Giving money to our Quebec seniors.
Fine until now, but Mr. Carney, in terms of the minority government.
Mr. Roy, we are in a crisis, the most serious crisis of our lives. We need to react with resounding, overwhelming strength. Yes, we need to cut a few taxes. Yes, we need to cut bureaucracy. But the government needs to act in a time of crisis. So we need to have a government ready to act.
Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, you weakened our economy. We need economic sovereignty, and that means bringing back production to Canada. And I would reverse liberal policies around development. I would expedite construction permits. We would have pre-approved permits, and that would, and I would also make sure that we could send our energy to Europe to break Europeans' dependence on Putin, and to break our dependence on the U.S.
The Conservatives and the Liberals both prioritize the ultra-rich, not you, not regular Canadians.
We do have a segment on that.
That's the difference.
We have a segment on energy and pipelines, so we'll come back to that later. There are people who are watching us who are concerned. There will be negotiations with the Americans, obviously. Well, you'll all say supply management here, but I'd like to say that Canada gave up market shares during the last 3 trade deal negotiations. We're talking about more than $450 million a year in losses for Canadian farmers. So what is something you wouldn't concede in a negotiation?
I will defend supply management. I will defend the French language. I will defend our healthcare system. I will defend our decisions and our laws. We will always be sovereign. And the way we're going to restore that sovereignty, Canadian sovereignty, is by making our economy stronger. We need to cut red tape by 25% for businesses. We need to reduce development charges, taxes on housing. We need to support labor and energy and domestic production. That's how we can be more sovereign
management. Well, go around the table, Mr. Carney.
In the face of the U.S.
It's nice to say supply management, but we've said it 3 times and it hasn't been done. So.
Well, this is the first time that I will be at the table if I'm elected as Prime Minister. I've said a number of times, and since the beginning of my campaign in Mauricie, we'll never touch supply management. We won't put Quebec culture or the French language on the table. And I think we all agree on that point. And that's important. We have to be very clear from the beginning when talking to the Americans.
One area that we don't agree on is that Pierre Poilievre would cut our healthcare system. You said it, everyone knows it. You said that you want to cut, you would cut dental care.
Not true.
Pharmacare, you called them bad ideas. And unfortunately, Mr. Carney's plan to budget the operating budget in 3 years would lead to $43 billion worth of cuts.
I was laid off by Stellantis because of the trade war with the U.S. How will your government stop Mr. Trump from attacking our industries one by one? And how will you protect our jobs?
Mesures concrètes, comment aider?
Concrete measures. How will you help workers? You all have different proposals. Mr. Poilievre.
First of all, I already announced a fund to help companies keep jobs, to keep workers in their jobs, because the priority of workers is to keep working. Secondly, there will be EI to protect people who have fallen on rough times. I will be there for people who've lost their jobs. At the same time, we need to stimulate investment to strengthen our economy and to encourage new companies. We need to unleash our natural resources, and we need to create more jobs in resource industries. We also want to create more jobs for tradespeople at a time when they need work to build new houses.
Let's stay on.
Well, first of all, three things. All the money from our counter tariffs will go directly to workers. Second, we have a strategic fund for manufacturing in Canada, specifically for the auto sector. And third, our counter tariff system for the automotive sector contains an incentive of $7 billion for the automakers to keep production and workers here in Canada. That's very important. But the reason that we've done all of this is so that we can have strong positions to negotiate with Trump.
Just to conclude, I think we need to encourage Canadians to buy Canadian-made cars. And that's why, as long as there are tariffs, we will scrap the GST on cars and trucks that are built here, mainly built here in Canada.
Because my next
I think the tariff is a good idea. What allows companies to buy and sell more, then yes, I do agree with that approach.
70%.
Mr. Poilievre copied our idea. We announced the GST lifting for Canadian-made cars before him.
Now, there are a lot of things that are in all of your platforms, but we'll come back to that. Now, 70% of Canadians say that they're buying fewer American products. That's a big number. You leaders, could you please name me one made in USA product that you no longer buy?
I buy my own strawberries.
So you don't buy strawberries anymore?
I buy Quebec strawberries, and I do my own shopping, by the way.
What products have you not bought, Mr. Carney?
No more wine, no more alcohol, no more American alcohol.
I do my own shopping, and I cook at home. Lots of products. Fruits, there's a lot of Canadian apples.
So you're making an effort?
Yes, I'm making an effort with apples, other fruit, strawberries.
Strawberries. Everyone is eating a lot of strawberries these days.
Mais malheureusement, Mr. Carney, je pense que vous ne le faites pas.
I bring it up because I do my own grocery shopping, which Carney does not.
This is a delicious conversation. It's beef in my case. I buy Canadian beef. It's the best beef in the world. But I never buy American strawberries either.
Okay. Organic beef from Quebec is also not bad.
Well, let's share some of that.
All right. It's very beautiful to see. Our next theme is the cost of living. He can manage our money. Oh, we're having a hard time here. I hope they'll be able to balance the budget and maintain the same quality of services. Inflation, lower taxes. I earn a good salary, but it's hard to pay for groceries, for childcare for our kid, for everything. Education is expensive. Prices keep going up. The middle class is hurting, and for the poor, it's worse. We're retired and we're counting every penny. We're getting poorer. I feel like no one really listens to young people on housing or the cost of living. So what does the future hold for us young people? What does the future hold for young people? I'll give you a few figures here very briefly. I'm sure this won't come as a surprise, but in Montreal, housing prices have more than doubled over 10 years, from over $300,000 to $671,000. Remarkable growth in Toronto and Vancouver as well. So my question, and you'll have 35 seconds, first of all, how can we improve access to housing, for example, for this young woman that we just heard from?
I'm with you, with all those who are having a hard time affording their groceries, or young people who can't buy a house. After a decade of liberal inflation, liberal policies have increased the cost of living the most in 40 years. I will cut your taxes for the average worker by 15%. We will scrap the GST on new homes, and we will incentivize municipalities to speed up permits and construction so that young people can once again buy a home and restore the dream of home ownership.
In order to fix this crisis in the cost of living, we need to make sure that Canadians have more money in their pockets, and they need to have more Canada in their pockets. So that means a tax cut for the middle class, and our plan is almost $800 per family. Cut the GST on first homes and increase competition. And in Canada, we have dental care, pharmacare, and daycares. We need to protect that, and we need to double new housing construction in Canada with our plan.
Very good. 245,000 housing units were built in 2024. You've all promised to massively accelerate the pace of that construction. The Liberals have said 500,000, the NDP 600,000 units.
And we need to get started so that we can get the housing market working better with a reduction in bureaucracy at the municipal level and in fees. But we are proposing a new institution, Build Canada Homes, which is going to build affordable homes using lumber from Quebec, using lumber from British Columbia, using Canadian wood, and using new Canadian technologies. We are going to create a new industry.
It seems to me you say 500,000 units? I mean, I could say 800,000, 400,000. Where's this coming from?
If I can have 35 seconds, we need to add funding of $25 billion for the development of affordable homes and $10 billion for...
Mr. Poilievre, you haven't costed your objective.
Yes, we will, in our platform, which is going to come out in a few days. But Mr. Carney, you're repeating exactly the same promises that Justin Trudeau has been making for 10 years. During the Liberal decade, when you were the economic advisor, the cost of housing has gone up.
Of England,
and you inflated the cost of housing then, too. You have a terrible record in England for real estate costs there, real estate prices. The problem is that the Liberals want to build bureaucracy. They want to balloon bureaucracy by creating new departments, new bureaucrats. We don't need more bureaucrats. We need more homes, more new doors on new homes for young families. The reason why housing has become so expensive today is because of taxes and bureaucracy. I will eliminate the GST on new homes. I will incentivize cities to free up land and accelerate permits so that we can build your home.
Okay, Mr. Poilievre's approach is everyone for themselves. In the COVID crisis, he said, okay, let's cut taxes, let's cut bureaucracy. This crisis, now that we're facing the greatest crisis of our lives, he's saying, cut taxes, cut bureaucracy. In a crisis, you have to do that to a certain point, but you have to act as a government. And if I may, you need to have capital to catalyze investment. And with a small amount of catalyzing investment from the Government of Canada, we can create huge private investment and a new Canadian industry.
Mr. Blanchet, then Mr. Poilievre.
Another proposal that I find interesting is to allow parents who have money in savings for their retirement to take the money temporarily to help for their kids' down payment. That's not $500 billion that will be required. These are not civil servants that will be fired. This is a logical decision made by parents like myself who want to help their kids without money from the state, with a tax measure that helps retirees who want to help their children. Would that not be more concrete than programs after programs that are just empty words and for which there's no financial framework?
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute, but let's let Mr. Poilievre conclude because you were having a conversation with Mr. Carney.
Mr. Carney, in 2020 and 2021, you said that inflation wouldn't happen and that it would have been a good thing if it did. You were quoted in the media and you even advised Justin Trudeau to print money, and that's what caused our inflationary crisis. You're just like Justin Trudeau. You have exactly the same policies, the same approach. We need change. And you, Mr. Carney, you do not embody change.
You represent the ultra-rich.
Mr. Poilievre is not Justin Trudeau. I'm not Justin Trudeau either, okay? In this election, the question is, who is going to succeed? Who is going to face Mr. Trump? Same parties, same ministers, same caucus, same ideology, same hostility against Quebec. It's not just because the leader changes that the philosophy will magically change overnight.
You are all proposing, or just about all of you are proposing tax cuts. We'll see them up on the screen here. Mr. Carney announced that on the first day of the campaign. Mr. Poilievre's been announcing them for a long time. So for a couple earning $90,000 a year, you can see the numbers up here: $1,299 in savings for the Conservatives, $1,011 for the NDP, $577 for the Liberals. And the cost of those measures is really what I want to underline here. Mr. Poilievre, you're spending more on tax cuts than the NDP or Liberals. Now, you've all arrived here this evening with no costed financial plan. It's been a long time since we've seen that at the time of the leaders' debate, the leaders don't have a costed plan. So we don't know how you're going to pay for these tax cuts. Now, I'm going to be careful how I word this, but don't you think it's irresponsible to Canadian voters to do this? Mr. Carney, you said you've got the numbers, but where's your costed plan?
As I've just said, we'll be presenting our costed platform this weekend.
But why not earlier at an event?
There are 10 days left in the election campaign. It's about the same thing as Mr. Poilievre, as I've seen. And it is going to be costed, and the operational budget will be cleaned up. We'll balance it in 3 years, but at the same time, we will be investing in Canada and in Canadians.
Mr. Poilievre, where would you make the cuts? This comes back to my earlier question to Mr. Carney in terms of the costed plans. What do you have to hide? Will transfers to provinces go down, for example?
We're going to cut consultants. No. Believe it or not, a Canadian family is spending $1,400 in federal tax just to pay for consultants. That's been a 100% increase. I'm going to cut consultants. Secondly, we're going to cut the cost of bureaucracy through attrition. People will be retiring, and we don't need to replace all of them. We can slowly, gradually reduce the cost of the bureaucracy. Third, we're going to pass a dollar-for-dollar bill. For every new dollar in spending, there will have to be a dollar in reduced spending. And we are going to generate $70 billion more in revenues.
And Mr. Carney don't have a costed plan that we've seen.
The carbon tax was something that was supposed to help the environment, but now, what are we doing for the environment? It worries me a bit. Our planet is starting to die. I really want to see someone who can prioritize climate change and the economy in Canada. We shouldn't be building a pipeline. The environmental consequences are very serious. Even if for ecological reasons it's not the best solution. Well, I think we have to think about it. There was a good project in place, but then it was dropped. A pipeline would have a major impact. We may have to make sacrifices if we want to be more independent.
Drill,
baby, drill, says Donald Trump. But I have a very simple question for you, and I would like just a simple answer as well. You have 35 seconds open debate. Do you want Canada to increase oil production? Yes or no?
Yes. More oil so that we can reduce our imports, especially our imports from the United States, a country that is threatening us right now. But in order to do that, we need to have low-risk oil. Canada is a low-risk country, and low-cost oil. Canada's more or less that right now, but we also need low-carbon oil because we need to be competitive over the long term. So at the same time, we need to have pipelines. We need to invest in carbon stockage, carbon capture as well. That's very important for our competitiveness.
To that later, Mr. Poilievre, should we produce more oil in Canada?
Yes. And we have to be able to get it to market by pipeline. Unfortunately, the other parties passed an unconstitutional law, C-69, which is a no more pipelines bill. And that's why Canadians and Quebecers now have to buy 139,000 barrels of U.S. oil every day. I will repeal C-69 to allow for the construction of hydroelectric projects, mines, and also pipelines so that we can get around Donald Trump and be sovereign when it comes to energy.
Mr. Carney, for 17 years now, the Liberals have been telling us that the only way to fight against climate change is to put a price on carbon with the carbon tax. There were elections on this. But the first day you came to power, you abolished this tax. What should Canadians understand from this? Is the fight against climate change no longer a priority for Liberals?
Not at all. It is still a priority, and it's a priority for Canada. We're talking a lot about diversifying our trade partners around the world. The European Union. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in manufacturing and energy in all of our products so that we can have better access to that market. But in terms of the carbon tax, we cut the consumer carbon tax. And that covers about 6% of the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. We are maintaining the industrial carbon tax for big polluters, but we're creating a new market so that major polluters will pay people and households to make green decisions.
You would axe the second carbon tax as well, the industrial tax. You would eliminate both. So there's not even a fight against climate change or no incentive except
that's not true.
Less gas.
There's a cost associated with using energy already, but my approach is a pragmatic one. For example, the National Bank calculated that if we export our natural gas, our liquefied natural gas, to India, for example, to replace coal, that could reduce emissions in India by 2.5 billion tons. That's 3 times the emissions of all of Canada, and would also bring a lot of money back to Canada. The Liberals are blocking the construction of the pipeline and of the LNG plants. For example, LNG Quebec is a project that would make it possible for us to sell our energy very profitably to Europe and reduce Europe's dependence on Putin. And that's what I would like to do instead of feeding into Putin's war machine.
You're saying that we need a pipeline? If, in spite of all of your efforts with the Indigenous nations, they say no, would you impose it in spite of all of your efforts? If Quebec says no, would you impose it?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't assume that because most Quebecers want a pipeline. According to the polls, look, there's no social acceptability for the status quo. Thank you very much.
That is the most empty sentence I've ever heard in this debate so far.
Can I answer the question?
It's nonsense, absolute nonsense.
I'll say what it means. I'll tell you. Quebecers who buy oil from Alberta, it's got to go through the U.S. currently, which gives Donald Trump power over our own energy. You say you're in favor of sovereignty. I'm in favor of economic sovereignty and energy sovereignty, and that requires a pipeline.
It's yet another scarecrow. The U.S. will never bomb their economy so much by sacrificing a hugely profitable product. That's such an amazing argument. How much will your pipeline cost? Trans Mountain cost $40 billion, but now you want a 4,600-kilometer pipeline without investors, with Europe that doesn't even want it in the first place.
Just to clarify, I would never subsidize pipelines. That's unnecessary. They're very profitable. The only reason why it's expensive now is because there are rules and legislation that prevent the construction of pipelines because of bureaucracy. We're going to get rid of red tape. We're going to open this up to
I'll ask my question again.
Protections, cutting environmental regulations.
If Indigenous nations, in spite of all your nice efforts, I'm talking about Mr. Carney and you who want a pipeline, if they refuse, what do you do?
Refuse? Are you saying across the board?
Yes, we've seen this.
Because
Il ne peut pas dire ça parce que ce n'est pas sa volonté.
He can't say that. He doesn't get to impose his will.
Mr. Poilievre, if there are Indigenous nations or provinces that are against it, what do you do?
Well, there are others who will be in favor. For example, Mr. Carney opposed a pipeline in the West, which would have enabled us to sell our oil to Asia, the Northern Gateway project. 80% of First Nations were in favor, 20% were against. And in a case like that, I think the majority rules. And I think we need to allow our companies to pay some of their taxes directly to First Nations to fight poverty through industry and production. That's our approach.
Would you be ready to impose one?
No, never impose. Can I respond, please? Never impose. No, but a couple of points. First of all, our relationship with the United States has changed everything. So imports from the United States and geography, as Mr. Poilievre has said, around pipelines, those are problems. Those are national security problems for us, and we need to act. That's the first point. Second, on March 21st, there was a meeting of the premiers. All the premiers were here in Ottawa, and we sat down and we agreed. All the premiers signed an agreement to have an energy corridor that would cover oil, natural gas, clean energy, and critical minerals. And with that, and with a process with Indigenous leaders, we can and we could have a solution to this problem. And that's an example of leadership. That's an example of bringing leaders together to meet a national goal. We need to do more than that over this crisis.
I'll ask the question again. If ever Indigenous nations
No, I've said no.
against
I've said
it,
no.
you forget the project?
Well, no.
You cannot force projects on people.
Listen, it's a question
I have another question about the environment. Here's the question. You have said that you are a pragmatic person. Do you agree that it is not pragmatic pragmatic to continue to subsidize oil companies with billions of dollars. That's not pragmatic at all. Would you agree?
Well, I agree with that principle.
Okay, then will you commit to stopping these subsidies?
Absolutely. It's clear.
This is why you need New Democrats. Look at that. We got a commitment from Mr. Carney.
New. It's not a new commitment.
This is why you need New Democrats.
That's not a new commitment.
There are lots of issues with immigration that are linked to Donald Trump. It's hard to immigrate these days. I'd like to stay if I can find a good job. We have to deal with people who are arriving in droves because people are arriving and they don't have work. Should we let them in or not? Why not? Why not welcome them if we have the capacity? Do you think we should let in anyone who wants to come? In the United States, there's one rule. In Canada, there's another. I think everyone should follow the rule.
On le sait, il y a plus de 500,000 Haïtiens.
We know there are over 500,000 Haitians currently living in the United States who are now being threatened with deportation. They might lose their temporary protection. I'll show you the numbers here. This is
Se sont présentés à Lacolle, au poste frontalier.
the number of people crossing the border in Saint-Bernard-de-Lacolle. 1,411 people in the first half of April. That's more than in March, February, or January. So you can see the numbers are growing. Simple question. You have 35 seconds each. Would you accept these Haitians into Canada or not? Mr. Carney.
Well, first of all, this is a question of humanity. This is a human issue. And these are some of the most vulnerable people in North America. But there are limits. We have to be human, but we have to be realistic. Canada cannot accept everyone. And we have an agreement with the Americans, the Safe Third Country Agreement. And under that agreement, we will send back most asylum seekers.
So they would be mostly sent back to the U.S. Mr. Blanchet.
The rules aren't tributary to the origin of the requester. We can't say we'll welcome the Haitians, but tough luck to the Venezuelans. The rules need to be the same for everyone. I'm particularly sensitive to this because I often meet with Haitian representatives. They are francophones, and so it's easier for them to integrate into Quebec. If Quebec is able financially to welcome them, then I'm sympathetic. But the rules have to be applied, and Quebec's welcoming capacity is at its very limit.
The formal rule now would be to send them back because they are in a safe third country, i.e. the U.S. Mr. Singh.
In general, we should do our part. It's a question of humanity and compassion. We appreciate the fact that our country is founded on immigration. That is something important to us. We want immigration levels that are in line with our needs. But yes, we need to take in people, but if we cannot accept people, well, we don't want them to have a bad life here in Canada and Quebec. So we need immigration, but we cannot take everyone.
Oui ou non?
Yes or no?
La question, c'est
The specific question
The question is,
do we accept those people?
for the people crossing the border at Lacolle, would they be welcome to Canada or not? Because we have the right to send them back under the Safe Third Country Agreement.
Unfortunately, they have to be returned because immigration has to follow the normal entry points. Quebecers are extremely generous and welcoming. They welcomed my wife, as Mr. Blanchet mentioned, but the Liberal government has abused Quebecers' generosity with an out-of-control immigration system. The population has grown 3 times faster than the number of new homes built. This has created a housing crisis in Quebec. They're at the breaking point. And the government of Quebec has been given the power to choose immigrants. That was under the Mulroney government that power was delegated to Quebec. So we need to have realistic numbers, realistic based on our housing capacity.
Here. What Mr. Poilievre is saying is that immigrants should be blamed for something that is really the fault of successive conservative and liberal governments who have not invested enough in our resources, who have not built enough housing, who have not welcomed people in the way that they should have been welcomed. This cannot be blamed on immigrants.
All right.
That's not true.
Quebec is now asking, given the number of asylum seekers in its territory, for $500 million. That was the amount they asked for in 2024. Mr. Poilievre, you'll be starting this open debate. Would you be sending a $500 million check to Quebec?
We have to work with the government of Quebec to fix the damage the Liberals caused with an out-of-control immigration system. And I also have to say that I reject the Century Initiative, which is a Liberal policy to balloon Canada's population to 100 million people. That's extreme. I think we should go back to immigration levels that are such that the population never grows faster than the number of houses, jobs, or healthcare services available.
Would you give more money to Quebec? And more generally, where would you like to have the immigration quota set?
Yes, we'll start with the second part. We need to have a cap on all types of immigration for a certain amount of time so that we can increase our capacity to welcome newcomers to Canada, including in housing, in training and language training here in Quebec, and make sure that the social safety net can accept them. And in those circumstances...
the targets announced by your predecessor, Mr. Trudeau, you would bring them down further, is that correct?
Well, there are some challenges here in Quebec, for example. Challenges with temporary foreign workers, for example, and it's a question of distribution, if I can say it that way. The distribution of workers across Quebec, and there's a shortage of workers, but we will maintain the cap on immigration for certainly a couple of years so that we can increase our ability to welcome newcomers.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, I told you. I told you. It was a pretty good one. So hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite parts were of this debate. And that's where we're going to end it. So thank you so much for watching. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you tomorrow where I'll be live streaming the debate in English. Make sure you go to the channel's main page. I'll even prep the live stream right now so you can click the link down below in the description or the pinned comment below to set your reminder for tomorrow's stream. Have a good night, everybody.